Good, good evening. I'm Zoe Elton. I'm Director of Programming for Mill Valley Film Festival, and seeing that trailer is like seeing my life go in front of my eyes. And it also makes me feel like this is an incredible year for film. And I'm so glad to see you all here tonight, and hope that you get to see many, many, many of the films that we have chosen for you this year. I'd like to thank the incredible community that comes together for this festival, many of whom have been coming for many of the 42 years. I have been coming for 42 years. I've worked this festival for 42 years. It's the only festival that I've worked. However, I asked one of our seasonal staffers how many festivals she'd worked in 1 year, and she said, well, maximum 1 year is about 12. So if her 4 years of working film festivals is around the same as my 42, I figure. But a festival like this comes together with great community, great support, and our sponsors for tonight are people who are very special to us. Delta Airlines has helped bring in so many guests this year, and Project Number 9 joins them as our co-opening night sponsors. So a big shout out to Delta Airlines and Project Number 9. I've been given this little card as a reminder to encourage you to actually use your phones, not necessarily during the screening, no lights and sounds during the screening, please, but definitely please follow us on Facebook at Mill Valley Film Festival, Instagram also at Mill Valley Film Fest, Twitter at MV Film Fest, and the hashtag is MVFF42. Now, I know you're all going to remember that, but you will see that coming up on screen during the screenings that you'll be coming to. And we really do encourage you to follow us, to let people know about what your experience is here, and tag us in your posts. That would be super great. I also want to let you know, if any of you are involved with sponsorship, you may like to know that Leanna Bender, our development director, had her baby last week. So we have a new member of the film festival family, which is kind of great. And this year we have over 200 films, 40 of them are premieres, 48% of them are by women, directed by women. We're getting very close to that 50-50 by 2020, and the quality of all our films, regardless of who made them, we think is pretty spectacular this year. Also, you know, we have some definite sort of only in Mill Valley kinds of things happening. I mean, with the 50 or so countries, that includes Peru, Saudi Arabia, Afghanistan, not countries that you would necessarily associate with having a big film culture. But we also have guests like Tenzin Chogyal, who's the 14th Nori Rinpoche and the youngest brother of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. But we also have Snoop Dogg. I mean, who else has His Holiness's youngest brother and Snoop Dogg on the same program? So I hope that you will enjoy some of the, they're not on the same night, just let me be clear. But I want to do something that breaks with our tradition a little. I want to introduce you to our programmers. We started a new initiative this year for programming fellows. It's, as you know, we have a number of programmers who've been with us a really long time. Sterling Hedgepeth, Karen Davis, Kelly Clement. They're not with us now because they're introducing films in other parts of the world here. I mean, you know, in Mill Valley Film Festival world. Also Maribel Guevara. But we started a new initiative this year to try and encourage and train new and upcoming programmers. This was headed up by Mimi Brody, who's joined us as our US indie programmer. And I'm just going to bring everybody up. And I'd like you to meet, I'm just going to call out names. Angie McKenzie, Rafael Prieto, Farida Garambosi, Miles Aiton, Mimi Brody, Charles Dickey, Joanne Passant, Shakira Rifos, Celeste Truffaut-Wong, Joao Federici, Ali Giordani. And are they all coming on up? Have I got everyone? I think so. Melanie Nichols. So these are the people who help us choose the films and research and negotiate. And a big thank you to you all. You will be seeing them over the next 10, 11 days. Would you like to say thank you to everyone for coming? Just give me a thanks. Okay, great. And thank you all. Okay. And last, of course, but not least, we are here tonight to see the US premiere of Just Mercy, Dustin Daniel Cretton's newest film. You may be familiar with his work, The Glass Castle, Short Term 12. This film is based on a true story, the story of Brian Stevenson, an extraordinary human being. Yeah. And when we saw it, it was an amazing experience and left me, for instance, feeling very moved and convinced that this was a great way to start the conversations that will happen during the film festival. And I think that it underscores that when one person is driven by a sense of truth and justice and driven by moral courage, you really can change our world. And I think that's what a lot of our filmmakers are doing in the film festival. But for now, stay around after the screening. We have some guests coming for a Q&A, which I think will be kind of great. And thank you for being here. Enjoy the film, and we'll see you for the Q&A shortly. Please join me in welcoming KARAN Kendrick and Jamie Foxx. Screenwriter Andrew Lanham and producer Asher Goldstein. Hi, Zoe. Nice to meet you, Zoe. Did I get your name right? Amy. Welcome.
And silence.
Love that silence. We need that moment. I think it's kind of amazing that we're seeing this. I mean, first of all, I love the title, Just Mercy. It really takes us in just in two words to the place of compassion and of justice that describes this wonderful film. So thank you all for making it. I know that's taken from the same title as Brian Stevenson's book. I find it kind of amazing to see this film. It's such an honor to have it here as our opening night film at a time when we're in such a moral quagmire. And on a day when, yeah, right, just a little.
Quagmire is, yeah.
Is that kind of the right word, right?
I have a few other terms to go. But you're so right.
Well, no,
absolutely right.
But share your other terms.
Some bullshit. Some bullshit. Some bullshit, man. It really is. And especially when it comes to, like, you have children, and that's an interesting thing too, because when you look at the moral compass of where we, sway back and forth, you've always felt that somewhere, people that are in authority always had that at the forefront, regardless of what the policy would be. But I'm afraid that that's even crumbling in front of, which is sad, because I think we're a whole lot smarter than that.
Well, we see in this film a lot of people who are a lot smarter. I guess Ruth Bader Ginsburg today said that this time in history will be seen as an aberration. But, right? But I find it so fascinating and so encouraging to see a story like this of somebody whose moral compass is true north and is really, living his own truth. So it's wonderful to have you all here. And what I'd love to know is what was that moment for each of you when you first connected with the film? We have a screenwriter, we have a producer. Just each of you, what was the first thing that touched you, moved you, ignited you when you knew that you were going to be working on this story?
So when I saw the woman, when I saw Minnie McMillan's image and a bit of video from her, I immediately saw my grandmother. And I saw a woman who was complex. She was afraid, but she played scared. She had every reason to walk away, but she chose to stand. And she chose to love, and in doing so, she stood in the gap and told other people it's okay. It's okay to forgive him. It's okay to support him. It's okay to love him. She looked past whatever experience they were having and chose to instead focus on his humanity. That's what she was standing for. And I think that speaks to the incredible work that Bryan Stevenson is doing.
Yeah.
He is showing us ourselves. He is inviting us to see the humanity in ourselves and then each other, introducing us to who we really are, the whole of who we are. We don't get to pick and choose, because that's a lie. And it's kind of what we've been living. And so he takes the blinders off. He takes he strips us down to the truth. And he says that even if the truth is ugly or uncomfortable, it's still our truth and it's still okay. Mm-hmm. So I feel like Minnie being able to share her story in particular, I'm a Southern woman, and to be able to share the story of a Southern woman just as she is, unapologetically, without remorse. It was just so, and to just be a part of telling the story at all. It was an incredible moment and an incredible opportunity that I'm so, so grateful for.
I came to this very early. I was given the book by our director, Destin Cretton, and one of our fellow producers, Gil Netter.
So had Dustin optioned it? Was that how it began?
Well, Gil and an executive of his found the book, and we had all been trying to find something to do together. And they both read it, and they said, "You should read this." And simultaneously, Destin had this really great ability to call a friend of ours who we met through the indie film world, a gentleman named Ryan Coogler, who you all might have heard of. And he called Ryan and he said, "Ryan, I have this book and I want to make it, and I think Michael B. would be the guy to do it." And so he said, "Cool, hold on." And he three-way called Michael B. Jordan and put them on the phone and said, "Michael, this is my friend Destin. I love his film. I think you'll love his film. He has something to pitch to you." And Michael jumped on. And when he jumped on the film, he jumped on the film both as the guy who would inhabit the character of Bryan Stevenson, but he also jumped on the film as a producer and as a filmmaker and as someone who I think really understood not only the depth of the character he could play, but the importance of the role, big picture, that he could play in getting the movie made, in getting the story told. And that experience was the first step of the process. To answer your question, the truth is that I didn't know who Bryan Stevenson was when I read the book Just Mercy. And I consider myself a worldly person, a progressive person, all these things, and I didn't know who Bryan Stevenson was. And I also thought I knew the things that Bryan Stevenson was supposed to be talking about. And then I read the book, and then I also learned that I didn't know. And that told me that there was something that we needed to share. And I just, as an artist, as someone who gets the privilege and opportunity to tell stories at this level, I just knew that this was something that, in whatever small way I could be a part of helping to elevate what it was that he's speaking to, that I knew it was something that I needed to be a part of.
When I read the book for the first time, I was obviously deeply moved. I think it's pretty much impossible to read the book without being deeply moved. Hopefully it's the same for the movie. Because of my working relationship and friendship with Destin, I felt like I could help him translate and realize his vision for the project to the screen. And I had a really firm belief that his vision for film in general matched what Bryan Stevenson was trying to do. Pretty soon after we started on it, we went to visit EJI, and we spent about 3 days just shadowing Bryan. And it was really, if you ever get the chance to meet him in person, it's even more, listening to him talk and meeting him in person is one of the most powerful experiences. And he radiates a kind of empathetic goodness and intensity and warmth that I think is very few people in the world are probably blessed with. He was teaching a class of NYU students, and we went out to dinner with them, and they were all in really good moods, and they were really happy to be interning at EJI. And they had all worked for other death row organizations, and we asked them what was different, like why are they so happy? And they say, oh, everyone else is bitter, but everyone who works for Bryan has hope. So that was powerful.
As you can see, there's just amazing people up here. Michael B. Jordan, I raised him from here. Like, I've known Michael B. Jordan when he, when his neck was skinny and he had the long braids and what's up, brother, And but just watching him, and he called about this, and I can't say enough about him in front of the camera and behind the scenes as well, to join this wonderful project, and then meeting Bryan Stevenson, who's not fatigued. And what I mean by that is that he's a black man who's not fatigued with talking about black issues. Sometimes we get fatigued. Yeah. And we think maybe we're complaining too much, but then when you see this happened in 1986, it jars you. And so with that, I was humbled, but all in. And then talking with Bryan, we talk about perceptions a lot. We talk about the perception of a black man. What do you feel when you see a black man immediately? The perception, what do people think? I used to do a joke. Sometimes I still do the joke, but I used to do this one joke I called it, whew. And what that means, I was in Chicago, I was doing a gig, and I went into my hotel. It was a nice hotel. And I go, and I had a hoodie on, and I get on the elevator, and there was white people on the elevator, and they saw me, and they huddled to the corner. Like, come on. Carol, get over here. Carol, Julie, get over here. I was like, what the fuck, man? And but then someone had enough courage to look beyond my hoodie, and they saw, oh, it's Jamie Foxx. It's a joke. But at the same time, it's something that I live with every single day. So it's like, that's what we were tackling, perceptions. Even as we see Walter, when the police officer pulls up in his hands immediately. And I think every black man knows that feeling, which even me today, like now, just a few days ago, I'm riding in a very nice car. It's a Lamborghini. It's nice. It was nice. And I was feeling good in my nice car. I felt white in my car. It was a white Lamborghini and I'm feeling white. I'm like, and I pull over to the gas station and the next thing you know, I see a police officer make a U-turn and pull into the gas station. But it's okay. I'm thinking, he has to know who I am. I'm, Jamie Foxx. But I speak with him and he gives me this. So then I speak again and I try to extend my hand. He doesn't want to speak. I said, okay, I get it. And as a matter of fact, the guy right there was in the car with me, Dave. And I went to go get some towels and come home. But now it takes 2 minutes to fill up your motorcycle tank. It takes me at least 8 to 10 for the Lamborghini, because it's like, $5 a gallon. So it takes about 10 minutes, but he stood there the whole time. And it wasn't until a little young Mexican dude came up and said, yo, Jamie Foxx, what's up? And the cop looked and he went, oh. Then he left. It's a joke, but at the same time, me and him knew that anything could have sparked something crazy. So what you see is us tackling those perceptions that still remain with us today.
Talking to a mainly white audience here tonight, and
What-
I don't mean that facetiously, but
Is it really? Hey, white people. No.
what can people do? I mean, if there was a thing, when people were getting attacked, when people would say, just be with the person who's, stand with the person who's next to you. I mean, what can people do to actually start to bridge that gap?
Something that I talk about is how this film changed me. I don't think you can watch it and be the same. I don't think you can see it and then continue to move forward on whatever path in whatever way. And it started to feel a little overwhelming. And I was like, okay, no one can do everything, although Brian Stevenson is close. But everyone can do something. And so what the film forced me to ask and answer for myself is, what is your something? What is your something? I think you have to choose where you are, right from where you stand, your circle of influence, what your something is. And it could be different for all of us. But I think that's where it begins. Something that Brian said very specifically was knowing who is in your local government, understanding how it works, being engaged, being an active member. For me, I have a cousin who was incarcerated. When I was a kid, he was incarcerated. My dad and his dad are brothers. He's named after my father. For 24 years and 8 months, I did not visit him. Always received phone calls, cards, always, but I did not take that extra step to engage. Once we wrapped between that time and this, I have been to visit him twice. He's in a different state. It's not convenient. It's not easy. It is necessary. That was my something, to show up in a way that I had not shown up before, to let him know I love you, not just in word, but in deed, to let other people in the prison know he has a family who loves him and claims him and honors his humanity. It starts there. And so I think we have to decide what is your something. Thank you.
Let's see if there are some questions from the audience. Anyone have a question they'd like to ask? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I just kept feeling, both in EJI's work and Mr. Stevenson's work, just kept feeling blessing and burden throughout and wondering what that blessing and burden, if that's what it can feel like to produce the work, perform the work, share the work, because the blessing is so apparent in the scene where you find justice, but the burden persists throughout and continues, and it just seems almost overwhelming to hold both, and I'm wondering what that's like from there.
Well, I know exactly what you're saying, because this is all bittersweet. We love the fact that this is a fantastic movie, but Walter McMillan, his life in shambles, and then passed away, and a lot of people like Walter McMillan who are living this in real life. So that's the part of it that I think that we all deal with. The blessing of it is to be able, when you said all white people, the blessing of it is this: we tested the movie in front of all black people, and it tested at 97, and then we tested in front of all white people, and I was like, oh, what'd they say? And it tested at 98. So I think what this is, like you said, it's a human story, and I think that what Destin did fantastically was build a movie that didn't take us over the black cliff, meaning like sometimes we can go too far. And what he did, being from Hawaii and having a different sensibility in certain things that we wanted to do, he wouldn't allow us to do. And even when you see characters, what I thought was brilliant, when you saw the white characters that had that were bothered by it, the correctional officer, when you see in his face like this is wrong, it gives you as the white patron an opportunity to see, yeah, that's me. Or when you see the prosecuting attorney, when he's toiling with this, like, this is. I think that's what's brilliant about the film, that it allows all of us to sort of feel like we're part of it. We're part of whatever the next movement is gonna be. And like I said, it's the blessing is we get a chance to do this, and then the burden is that it's sadly still happening.
Thank you. Is there a question on this side? We've got one here.
Hi, thank you. Thank you guys all for coming here, and thank you for acting in the movie we just saw. I had a great experience. I had a question specifically relating to this one specific scene. It seemed like this really intentional moment right before Herbert was about to get executed, and then there was a nice pause, and he said, "I hold no ill will. I forgot the rest of the phrase, but something along the lines of that." And it really gave me a parallel to, I don't know if you guys are following the case of Botham Jean most recently in, I think it was Texas, where a video's going viral and his brother says something along very much the same lines of, I don't wish anything ill upon you to Heather Geiger. I don't want anything bad to happen to you. I love you and pray for you. And I think, at least in my outer periphery with my generation, that struck a lot more confusion than inspiration in a sense. And just, I can definitely see it more on the lines of like having a reaction like Johnny D's son, where it's just like you stand up, and even when you feel like you haven't been in the middle of that, you still kind of get that feeling of how much longer. So my question is, what directly would that scene, I guess, from anyone who had been privy to it, what direct message would you have really wanted it to send from, I guess, someone from my generation, another young, also person of color, who doesn't necessarily have to have like the facts of this movie proven as much as they are just seeing it?
I will say those were Herbert Richardson's last words. So there were moments where Destin and I, and discussing it with like Asher and Michael B., where I think there were a few times where we tried writing other things. But I think a person's last words, we ultimately all agreed, we can't fully, I don't think any of us could fully speak to the extent of why he chose to say those words as his final words, but the movie had a responsibility to portray what it was that he chose to say. He actually, in reality, was so afraid of looking at the electric chair that he had them put a blindfold around his eyes, and he was electrocuted without being able to without ever seeing the electric chair. But my impression from what I know of him and from talking to Brian was that he was a kind and gentle man. So from my admittedly white perspective, it felt to me like he was saying that despite what had happened to him, he chose forgiveness, or at least didn't hold any hate in his heart toward the people around him who were doing this horrible thing to him.
And I think that I don't suppose that we were trying to necessarily message what someone in his position should have been feeling. As Andrew said, we felt like we had to honor him and be as true to what happened as possible. But I suppose if we're looking at the movie through a lens of an abstract, I suppose the messaging that we are trying to convey is that this man had such an innocence about him and had such an accountability for his actions that all of the people who were tying him to an electric chair did not, that it really demonstrates what a victim of a murder he was. And I think that that's, if like I said, if I'm sitting back and I'm looking at the film as a narrative, that's the thing I take, is not necessarily something that we were trying to portray as this is how you should act in such a situation, but rather demonstrating again that he was a victim of a murder, that he should not have been put to death, and he should not have been treated in the way that he was.
I understand what you're saying, because you're young. And what I applaud is the youth. And what you're saying is that people my age and older, and this is sort of layered in what we've been taught to, if they do something bad to you, still love them. But what I appreciate is the youth coming up now who's saying, I want action to it. And so don't let that part keep you away from what you're doing. Because I understand. It's like the average age of the kid that was with Martin Luther King was 15, 16 years old. And so you're part of something. I understand. You feel what I'm saying? I completely understand what you're saying. And it's just that, look, we're coming to grips with the way the new thinking is. It's like, my parents allowed me to come through a civil rights sort of umbrella. We didn't have certain things in our face. But now that you have social media and things like that, you guys have it. And I appreciate what you do when you do see it, that you do sound off about it and you speak truth. And maybe we could dialogue after and I'll share, some real stuff. Me and you, brother. I'm gonna show all them.
I think, too, there is a freedom in forgiveness. I think there's a bondage in unforgiveness. And I completely understand the feeling, the understanding of how you have been oppressed, pushed down, disregarded, not considered human for so long. There is a fight that swells. And the fear is that if you don't fight, then you begin to accept what is being said as truth. But for me, that moment is so powerful, and I think it's very specific. I don't think this is an umbrella statement. You know what I mean? I think this is where he was very specifically, and I can't say that this is what he meant, but what it spoke to me was that he was free. He chose freedom in that moment.
So it has to do with choice as well.
I think so.
Yeah.
Because
Right,
what
right,
other
right.
choices
Yeah.
does he have to exercise?
Right. Zero. Yeah. I think we've maybe got time for one more question. So I'm going to let the mic runners go for it.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you. James Weldon Johnson, the great black sociologist, he wrote Lift Every Voice and Sing, was the first African-American licensed to practice law in Florida. And as a lawyer is supposed to see his client through to the end. He saw his client convicted, hanged, and he never practiced law again. What keeps, in your estimation, Bryan Stevenson positive and keeping the law students around him and the lawyers that he works with positive despite overwhelming odds in getting people off death row?
I think the short answer is I don't know. I think that he's graced for this work. Before I met him, I wasn't convinced that he was actually human. I was like, somebody made this. Like, nobody can do this in this way because it's so tremendous. I remember meeting members of his staff, and to see like 150 people still have hope. Someone talked about this. But to see his staff have hope and to have such a light spirit. And I said this to him. I was like, everybody on your staff is still so present and hopeful, and they're not bogged down by the gravity of what's happening. And he said, kindness is still important. Something that simple. And I think it just speaks to who he is as a person.
I think it's, if you believe in God or the universe or whatever, a higher power or not, there has to be people in this world who are just born with an innate sense of right and wrong and the ability to follow through and do something with that. And I feel like at a very young age, with the scene in the beginning when Bryan meets his first death row inmate was, I think, the most important scene in the whole book for Bryan to be in the movie. It was incredibly important to him at all times that scene remain in the movie. I think when he met that inmate, it changed everything for him, and then he was on a path from that moment forward. And when you meet the lawyers at AGI, it's impossible not, like, they're all just so aware there's people dying, there's people who are going to die if they wallow in self-pity or think about, the crappy day that they've had. Like, everything pales in comparison to what they're working towards. And so their choice is to have hope and kindness and grace and to move forward with that, or to become bitter and jaded. And I think our country is very lucky that the choice that he's made.
I think it's super vital. I mean, we're talking about Bryan. I think it's clear what he's doing, and you see the postscript of the film, he and his attorneys, et cetera. But just to reiterate it, he is working today, right now, at this moment. He is, if not asleep, he is working for people in this country. He has changed federal precedent for the Supreme Court several times now. Just last session, while we were working on the movie, while we were shooting the movie, he was arguing in front of the Supreme Court and changed the way that we look at people who might not be aware of the crimes that they committed and if they could be put to death for a crime that they weren't even aware of. There's a gentleman that he was defending who had dementia and wasn't even sure as to where he was, let alone why he was in prison. And so that's something to, I think, really remember, is that all of the work that's going on is happening now, and that there's ways to support that work today and now.
Any last word from anyone? I mean, I think supporting the work obviously is great, and I would say what you all have done. I mean, this is a phenomenal cast. This is a phenomenal group of people who have brought this story to the screen, and you haven't just brought us the story; you've honored it, and I think touched us so much. And I hope that everyone finds there's something as inspiration coming away from your telling of this story. Thank you all so much. This was such an honor. Thank you.